Ya se está conectando. Hi, Tiffany. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being with us today. For those of you that don't know, Tiffany is co-chair of digital biology at Singularity and an amazing scientist. And we have some questions for you. So,
I'd be thrilled
talking about
to answer your question.
Thank you. So, talking about the coronavirus, how come it's so contagious?
So I think there are two reasons here, at least two reasons that this virus is so contagious. First of all, this virus is able to infect on average 2.5 to 3.5 people, which is quite a few people, right? That's why we're seeing these exponential curves, because every sick person can make at least 2 more people sick. Another reason it's so contagious is because you can make people sick before you even know you're sick yourself. So that's pretty dangerous. And another reason is not because of the virus, but because of us. Our lives are so connected today. We're connected all over the world. We're just connected. And that is exactly the condition that a virus needs in order to make people sick.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if anyone that's joined has a question, you can leave it for us. We have a few to go through, but if we have extra time, we'll try to do so. Tiffany, a key question that we keep getting is, let's say I get coronavirus and I recover. Can I get it again?
So we don't actually know the answer to that yet. Our assumption is that this would work like other diseases, where once your immune system has been trained to recognize it, that it would be able to squash the infection if it were to happen again. That's actually how vaccines work, right? Your immune system is ready to go. But so far, I don't know of a study that has been shown yet that has really done an in-depth analysis as to whether folks can get it again. Because we're in a crisis mode and because we're moving so fast, it's been hard to get some of those data.
Yeah. So a lot of us are staying home, and the goal is to flatten the curve and give our healthcare system a fighting chance. But a big question is, what happens when we lift the quarantine and we go back out? Will we see a second peak?
The question is a really good one, and the answer is it depends. It depends what it looks like when we lift that curve. So almost certainly, yes, the numbers will start going up again once quarantine is lifted. But if we are still looking at certain social distancing practices, then we are able to try to keep the curve not quite as high. But also, I think instead of thinking about it going back to normal, I think we need to be thinking about a new normal where governments might be able to have responses at different levels of urgency. And so it'll be like putting your foot on the gas pedal and taking it off and putting it on and taking it off. So it might be that maybe we're allowed to go back to work, but we're not allowed to go back to rock concerts for a while, which will make me sad, but this is what we have to do. And so I think being flexible, being responsive, and paying attention to trusted sources of information is going to be really important to make sure that the next waves aren't big.
That makes a lot of sense. So I think that goes hand in hand with a question that we get a lot as well, which is like, how realistic is it that we're going to have a treatment by September, which seems to be an arbitrary date, or by when can we expect a treatment?
So there are two things that I'm watching. I'm watching treatments and I'm watching vaccinations. So let's look at the treatment first. So that's how you help someone once they've already gotten sick. So there are multiple clinical trials going on right now all over the world where people are looking at drugs that were designed for something different and are now being what's called repurposed to try to fight COVID. And I like this approach a lot because it is much faster than trying to find drugs from scratch. So I think in terms of finding a treatment, it is entirely likely that we will have a treatment in 6 months, if not before. Now, the question is, what about vaccination? So I've heard some folks saying we'll have a vaccine in 6 months. In my opinion, that would be a miracle. Remember, vaccines usually take at least 1.5 years, if not 2 years, to even design, let alone test and deploy. But we have these really cool new platforms now where people are able to innovate and design vaccines faster than ever before. So it's possible that there could be a vaccine in testing by the end of this year.
Okay, that gives us hope.
Which I know sounds like a really long way away, but is incredibly fast considering how hard the science is.
And I think that's really important. Have you seen a lot of collaboration around the scientific world working to come up with solutions for COVID?
I have seen incredible collaboration. And if I could point to one thing in this whole crisis that makes me feel good about people and the future, it's the collaborations that have been happening between big companies and small companies, between big companies and government. I would never have been able to predict that big pharma companies would be able to pivot so quickly and to work so carefully hand in hand with organizations like the WHO to get these drugs tested and to come up with new things as fast as possible. I think with an innovation mindset, we seem to think that big companies can't move fast, and COVID is proving us wrong. And I think that's a really exciting thing. But I'm also seeing individuals as well. Just everyone's talking about ventilator design and mask design. That's really exciting to be able to democratize these technologies and to come up with creative things that are still safe and still work. Those are the two things that we absolutely have to make sure are still the case. But just this democratizing of creativity in a crisis is spectacular.
Yeah, and to see everyone kind of trying to figure out what's the best way that they can help, it's definitely amazing. Around the question with vaccines and treatments, something that a lot of people are wondering is, what's the possibility or probability that the virus will mutate, and what would that mean in terms of treatment and vaccine?
So all viruses mutate. That's how evolution works. Actually, everything evolves, everything mutates. And there's already been tracking all over the world of the mutations that have already happened with this virus. Now, one thing that we've gotten lucky on so far is that the places where the mutations are happening do not seem to be the same places that folks are targeting with a vaccine. So that's lucky. Okay. And hopefully that kind of luck and also that strategy will hold. Usually what folks who are designing vaccines do is they target places that are unlikely to mutate, because once it mutates, the vaccine doesn't work anymore, right? So scientists are ahead of that. And one thing that's super cheap DNA and RNA sequencing is giving us are mutational maps all over the world. And there's just a phenomenal amount of data right now that are going to empower vaccine designers to make the best possible choices to avoid these future mutations.
Definitely. And I'll just remind everyone who's online right now that if you guys have any questions for Tiffany, submit them right now as we go through this ones. We've seen a lot of debate currently going on around the masks or not a mask. And I'm wondering if you can point individuals into, like, how do I make the decision of whether I should wear a mask or not?
Right. So I think the best thing to do is to listen to the WHO, the World Health Organization. And what their policy is right now is that if you are sick or if you are caring for someone who is sick, wear a mask. But if you yourself are not sick, then save the masks for people who actually need them, like our healthcare workers. So in the United States, here in the United States, don't have enough masks, and yet folks are stockpiling masks at home. To me, that's a problem. That's undermining the system. So I personally only wear a mask if I am out in a grocery store, and I don't go anywhere else right now, so there's nowhere else to go. But if I'm out just standing in my yard, or if I'm walking in my neighborhood and keeping my 2-meter distance, I don't wear the mask.
Amazing, very helpful. And I think that leads us into the individuals, right? Like, we are all people, a lot of us are trying to figure out ways of how can we help, but also what can we do? So I'm wondering, and that's two-sided question. One is, as individuals, what can we best do to protect ourselves and our families? And then I would love to hear from you, how do you think we can help?
Yeah, so the important thing that you can do as an individual is to follow the advice of reputable organizations like the WHO. I know it's go to Instagram like we're doing here, or WhatsApp or Facebook to get your news. Resist the urge to do that. Don't just reshare things because somebody you know shared it. We've seen lots of stuff that's either straight up lies, fake news, or just wishful thinking. And if you do something like think that garlic is going to keep you safe from coronavirus, which it's not, then you are making a bad choice for yourself and also for your family. So doing the things that the WHO and good governments are asking you to do. If you can afford, don't go to work, stay 6 feet away from other people, 2 meters, right? 2 meters is a lot further apart than you think. Don't go to public places. Don't go to the park. And right now I'm in week 3 of my quarantine here in California. So we are kind of getting used to things, but just don't cheat. Because if you cheat, it really does make a difference. It only takes a tiny amount of time for a virus to be transferred to you, or for you to transfer the virus to someone else. So just do the right thing. I know it's boring. I know it's inconvenient. I also know that it's really affecting people's ability to make money and to feed their families and to pay for their houses and things like that. This is all really scary. But not cheating and doing the right thing is super important. Also, when your restrictions get lifted, don't run out in the street and hug everybody you see, because again, that would lead to one of those second waves. And just keeping in mind to just follow the directions, do the right thing, be responsible about the news that you read and the news that you share are the most important things you can do as individuals. In terms of how companies or groups or things like that can help, there are lots of resources online showing you how you can donate time, you can donate money. I know around me here in Silicon Valley, there are fabric stores that are giving away fabric so that people can sew masks at home and then donate them to hospitals. So there are also things you can do. There are ways to volunteer. So look around to see if there are organizations or your local government that are putting together virtual volunteering opportunities, whether it's talking to elderly people, reading to children so their parents can work for an hour. Any of these things can be really, really great for your neighborhood and also for the larger community. I know in my neighborhood, there are people who are willing to go to the grocery store for elderly people, buy their food for them, and then leave it on their doorstep so that the elderly don't have to struggle to get out of the house and then go to a crowded place like a grocery store where they would be very vulnerable. One other thing I think everybody can do is find moments of gratitude in a day and share them. This is a really, really scary time. We don't know what's happening today. We don't know what's happening tomorrow or in 6 months or in a year. But I'm looking specifically every day for ways that I can be glad that my kid's not at school anymore, or glad that my husband's working from home every day. We play games, we tell stories. Yesterday, my kid drew a funny picture of me and I posted that on Facebook. Anything that helps remind us why we're doing all this. We're not doing this for technology. We're not doing this because of the disease. We're doing it for people. And that's what we have to hold on to.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. To think about what we share is so important because that's what we're creating around us. So making sure that we can share positive and beautiful things instead of things that might not be true, which leads me to one of my final questions, which is you mentioned the importance of following really sources that have the correct evidence. Do you have a few that you follow? I know you've mentioned the WHO. Are there any other places where you think we can get the right information?
So I have been really impressed with the reporting from The Economist. They are doing really fantastic, really accessible, quantitative analyses of what's actually going on, how worried we should be. And it's not just from a health perspective. They're looking at politics, they're looking at economies, they're looking at work. So that is my strongest recommendation. I think they're doing a wonderful job. And if you have trouble accessing that, please reach out to me and I'll help you. So that's a good one. Other reputable news outlets are classic ones like the BBC, The Guardian, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. These are independent news outlets that are continuing to do exactly what journalists are supposed to do, which is fact check, give you the most reliable information, and help you digest unfamiliar information. So it's easy for me to go to the WHO's website because this is what I do. But if it's hard for you, you need to find a trusted intermediary like these really great publications, or also looking online for folks who are doing a great job of translating this health and biology information into stuff that you can do. And again, I'm happy to help people find those trusted people to listen to.
Amazing. That's really helpful. And my last question, which I think is keeping people a little worried, is sometimes, and I think it's because we're all scared, we think we have something in our throat, or we start taking our temperature all the time, or we're just really worried. Can you just, in really simple, like, when's the time when you're like, I now need to go to the hospital, or I might be at risk, that we should actually leave the house versus just, you know, stay home and drink water, sleep?
The number one symptom that folks are watching for is a very dry cough. So the problem, of course, with COVID is that it's similar to other things like the seasonal flu. So here's the part that you said that I want to respond to most. If you think that you need medical attention, don't go to the hospital. Call your doctor first, because now health systems have in place phone screening to ask you some things first to find out whether you are qualifying to take a COVID test to find out if this is what you've actually got. Rushing to the hospital is the worst possible thing you can do. First of all, because if you are actually sick, you can make everybody else in the hospital sick. And if you're not sick, you don't want to get sick by going to the hospital. So contact your local health authorities if you think that you are potentially have this disease. And again, if you look on the WHO website, they've got some really beautiful, simple ways of telling you what the most common signs and symptoms are.
Amazing. And I know that here in Costa Rica, hospitals have also habilitated
and, you know,
so you can call.
Yes, please. Yes, call. And also remember, folks, now is not the time to be doing something dumb that could end up with you breaking your arm. Or like two weeks ago, I think I broke my toe. And my son was like, Mommy, you've got to go to the hospital. And I was like, I am not going to the hospital. No, I'm just going to ice it and tape it, because right now I'm not going to the hospital. So be smart. Now is not the time to take risks. Keep yourself out of the hospital.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Tiffany, I really, really appreciate your time and answering all of our questions. Thank you for simplifying complex scientific concepts for us. And if there are more questions, I might do a follow-up or I'll send them to you. But thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Maricel. And Costa Rica, stay strong. Pura vida.
Thank you.